Something that really surprised me about the build quality of this 2023 Jeep Gladiator is that the front bumper is mostly made out of plastic. And well, for me, that's just not gonna cut it, because I wanna turn this Jeep Gladiator into the ultimate overland camping setup. And to be able to do that, I want to be able to mount a winch on the front of my bumper. Since getting this Jeep, I've gone further and further off the beaten path than I ever thought would be possible. However, I've always done those trips with my friends. I feel like if I'm gonna get out there by myself, I need to be as prepared as possible for any challenges that come my way. And so today I'm going to install a brand new bumper on the front of my Jeep. And continuing along with my general theme for my build of this Jeep, I've got a Stubby bumper from Hooke Road that I'm going to install today. Now this Hooke Road bumper is only about $400 if you buy it from Hooke Road. And so while there are quite a few options out there for various bumpers that you can install in your Jeep, I wanted to get one that was cheap but also had material that was thick enough that it could provide some protection in the event of an accident. And while unboxing, I noticed that this material has a similar issue to what I had when I installed my roof rack a few months ago. And that is that some of the paint has a little bit of flaws in it. And that's not a showstopper for me, because I do have some flat black primer, and all I've got to do, assuming my primer still works, touching up the paint on the bumper was that easy, and that will protect this until I get my next scratch and I apply another layer. Now before I can install the new bumper, of course I have to remove this old bumper, and I don't have a trim tool. However, I do have a flat tip screwdriver. And so although this isn't as efficient as getting those trim pieces off, it still works. It's just much more of a pain. If I had the correct tool, I'd be able to pop these off in just about 2 seconds each. For this initial run, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those trim pieces that I want to pull out. If I have to pull a few more out, there's 2 or 3 on each of these end caps that protect the fog lights. Yes, of course, having the correct tool is the best way to do this, but like I said before, it's not really a showstopper, and it can definitely be done without that tool. Next, we're going to remove a few 16mm bolts, and it does call for a short well socket, but unfortunately I only have a deep well socket, so the thing that's blocking it is the plastic cover for the other fog light. So I removed a bolt from here, and on the other side 2, and then 3, and then 4. Once you remove the electrical connector, there are 8 nuts that hold the bumper in place. Now that I've got those 8 nuts removed, I can just pull the bumper right off. There are 4 nuts on this side, as well as 4 nuts in the same location on that side right there. Metal bumper under this plastic cover is only, it's not even an 1/8 inch thick, so this material will definitely crumple quickly in the event of an accident. So the small platform where the winch will ultimately end up sitting requires the use of 2 of the bolts that we pulled out when we were taking off the bumper. And this thing did require a little bit of convincing to get it into place, but now that it's in place, it actually feels pretty solid, even though I haven't tightened the bolts yet. Before installing the bumper, there is this little chin piece that I want to go ahead and install on the bottom of the bumper. This thing serves in addition to the skid plate that's already on the front of the Rubicon. So all that's going to do is give me just a little bit more protection on the front undercarriage of the Jeep. So I've got all these bolts started, and I'm noticing there is just a little bit of overlap on the corners where the chin spoiler meets up with the bumper. I don't think it's going to be a huge problem. We'll see how that looks when the installation is complete, but you can see in this camera angle that there is about 1/4 inch of overlap from the chin. It's just 7 nuts and bolts that hold all this together, and I'm going to go through, tighten these up, and then we'll mount the bumper onto the front of the vehicle. So I got the bumper completely installed, except for I need to still wire the lights to the original harness, and it looks a little empty where I don't yet have a winch. And so I think I'm gonna go with the Badlands winch from Harbor Freight. It's another cheap option, and when I get that, I'll install that in the near future. But now I'm gonna get the wiring harness out of the original bumper so I can install it on this bumper to at least have that factory feel if I need to remove the bumper in the future. I ultimately decided not to use this chin spoiler that came with this bumper, and here's why. This little chin spoiler just hangs off the front and it only drops basically straight down. However, I have the Rubicon model, and the Rubicon comes with this little skid plate right here, which is much more robust than just using that chin spoiler alone. On top of that, there are some holes in the front here, and I'm worried that I'll hit maybe a branch or something out on the trail, and that'll come up and get lodged underneath and inside of those components right there. So I feel like this doesn't provide the same protection that that Rubicon skid plate provides. This LED light bar was super simple to install. However, I have not hooked up any wiring for the lights yet. I have some auxiliary switches that I'm going to install over the next few days, and when I get that complete, then I will be able to hook up this light to that system. Each side of the bracket has a bolt going into the light bar, and then a nut and bolt that holds it to this cross member. With this cross member and light bar installed, it doesn't look as empty without a winch inside. However, there is this gap. I need to get a fair lead, and I need to get a winch very soon to complete this front bumper. So there are actually 6 bolts and 2 nuts required to install the bumper to the front of the vehicle. These 6 bolts and 2 nuts are easy to install, and then once you get them installed, the only hard part is getting the leverage you need to torque them down properly. The mounting instructions did not explicitly call for reusing this bracket. However, this bracket provides reinforcement to the crumple zone in the front bumper, so I went ahead and installed it using the original bolt and then added it under these 2 nuts. So one thing that I'm certain about with this new bumper is that it is absolutely more sturdy than that OEM bumper. So I have no doubts that this will provide additional protection in the event of an accident with the Jeep. However, I do feel like it is possible that because this front bumper isn't as long as that original bumper, that possibly some tree branches or things like that can get in this gap and possibly cause issues with the suspension and maybe even those wires that go to the wheel speed sensors and other components of the suspension. However, for the off-roading community, this is a pretty common length for a front bumper, and so I'm not extremely worried about that problem. If it does become a problem in the future, I will replace this bumper with perhaps one that at least overlaps a little bit with the tires. My bumper install is about 90% complete right now. I don't want to rush and do these wires because I don't have any extra wire to use for that install, so I'm not going to attempt to put those in right now. In addition to that, I want to get my switches installed so that I can use this LED bar. I don't want to rush that today either, so I'm going to go ahead and tape up these ends for these wires to protect them from dirt and grime while I get those other things installed. When I get those final touch points completed, I'll share that in this video here. In the meantime, watch whatever comes up because YouTube thinks you'll enjoy it.